Hello everyone. So hopefully we're live and you can see and hear me. We're going to do some cross-stitch conversion today. So just to get started, this is the sort of thing we're going to do. So most people I think start from doing a kit for cross-stitch and then probably move on to buying a pattern and kitting it up themselves and stuff. And at some point you decide, well, I want to do my own picture. So very often it's not necessarily artwork or photograph, it'll be a picture of a pet or other loved one. So, and this is the sort of thing you can do. So you've got a source picture here. This is an example, a mock-up of the pattern, and this is the actual cross-stitch piece that's been created from that. And I've actually got it here just to show you that it's a real piece of stitching that my wife's been working on. So I'm going to start with, I don't want this to be all about just our software. I want it to be sort of generally useful. So I'll start with the different options because there's more than just one way to convert your piece. And I think the most common or the traditional way to do it has been to use a program. So something like PC Stitch, Mac Stitch, WinStitch, lots of names with Stitch in them. And what these do, they tend to be focused on giving you a canvas to draw on as well as converting images. But let's just do a very quick run through. So this is Mac Stitch. Opened on my other window, other monitor rather. So you start by selecting an image. Let's do the eagle, just as an example. On this one you set the size that you want your pattern to be in stitches. So let's get it to, I think the other one was 500. The cloth doesn't really matter, it doesn't change the size of the piece that comes out. Sorry, the size of the pattern. This lets you limit the number of colours and it goes up to 230. Let's pick 100. And then I find they have a lot of different colour threads on this one. So I'm going to choose the DMC thread set. Click that. Oops, opened on my other monitor. And then it's converted the pattern. Now you can zoom around. Let me just zoom out a little bit. There we go. So you can see it's done fairly decent job converting the pattern. You'll see some sort of pattern interference here. And this is typical of the software that you can buy and download. There's lots of menu options. You can do custom stitch types. So this is the sort of thing that if you were going to sell cross-stitch patterns, you'd probably buy an app like this to make them, and you can generate your PDF from it and then sell those PDFs. My experience is this type of software tends to be it's an older approach to doing software. So I'm sure you can all remember, if you can remember driving to PC World where you used to actually buy a box with software in it and install it on your PC. The great thing about it is it's a one-time purchase. Usually you do have to pay for upgrades normally to get newer versions as time goes on, but you are often locked to one operating system. So you're either buying software for your Mac, for your PC, and it doesn't work then on another operating system like Linux or a Chromebook. Chromebooks are a great newer, cheaper option. But this is definitely something to try. A lot of them have free trials that you can download, so you can try it out before you spend any money and see whether you like what it's generating. So let's close this and go on to the next option. excuse me. So after buying software, the next thing that came out was the internet, really, and that enabled people to offer software as a service online. So Pick2Pat is a very well known app, and this lets you upload a picture. Let's just put the picture in there. This works a slightly different way, and this is kind of what I'd refer to as from software development terms. This is that didn't work for some reason. Let's try again. Eagle. This is what I'd call a Web 1.0 type app, where you fill in a form, you submit the data to a server, the server processes it and gives you something back. So there's a limited amount of interaction. So again, we've got a similar thing where you're choosing on this one you don't set the number of stitches, you're kind of indirectly setting it by the fabric count and the size. So we'll do the maximum just to show how it comes out. Excuse me. Now this works slightly differently to the other in that it gives you a lot of variations with different, I think these are different colour counts. Yes, that's 30 colours, 25 colours. So it gives you the range to pick from, and as you can see, as you go down in the number of colours, it gets progressively less realistic looking. The best one was, so 75 colours was the maximum one. And this can give you great results, so it's definitely something you should try out. But what I'll go through today is showing you using our software that we've developed, and we've tried to make this. This is a more modern approach to building applications, but it's using web technology. So the advantage is it runs in your browser, so you don't have to buy or download any software. So you can just run it in. Runs best in Chrome, Safari and Firefox, and you can run it on any platform. So if you've got a Chromebook, you can actually run it on your phone as well. So to get to it, you can either go from our blog and click on Pattern Maker, or you can just go to my.threadbare.com. And what I'm just going to do is pull up some images to import and just show you. Now, before we get into actually making patterns, I'm just going to click on the designer here, and this is our pattern making software. The key thing to remember when you're making a pattern is what you're going to do is make the image worse. So you're taking a picture, and usually you're going to make it a lower resolution, and you're going to limit the number of colours that are in the picture. And this is important. So if you start with a bad picture, it's not going to look good. It's not going to be made any better. So I'll just go and find a picture and just grab a drink. So let me just hide my video. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'll just start with that eagle picture again. So you just, on this one, you just drag and drop the picture onto the page, and you'll see it go through some processing steps here, and that's the pattern that's been produced. Now, just to run you through some of the UI on our app, you've got some controls down the left, and these are what allow you to adjust the picture and the output of the pattern. On the right, you've got the size and the number of stitches and the number of colours that have been used, and just an indication of how that size. So the sizes in stitches, and that will come out at different physical sizes depending on the stitch count of the fabric you do it on. And then lower down we've got all the threads that have been used and the number of stitches on each. And you can sort, these are sorted by the number of stitches. You can sort by code if you want instead. So you can see them there. And you can see here it's used some of the new DMC colours, the 01 to 35, and that's because we've got this thread set here which is DMC 482, so that's the full set. If we didn't want to use those, we could switch it to a different set of threads, and this is basically, it's not using all 447 colours, it's saying you can use threads out of that set. So in this case it's chosen 91 colours and we can adjust that, so we've got a limit that we can set to the colours. So if we wanted, we can go up to the maximum number and say, you know, use whatever colours you want. So there's 180. If we go to the 482 set, maybe slightly more. Yeah, 187. But a lot of these colours, once you get past, there's obviously a lot of black in this picture. Once you get down, some of them are only a handful of colours used. So you don't normally want that number of colours. It's going to make it a lot of work to stitch, and that's why you lower this. And what you really want to do, the thing with converting into a pattern, is you want to make the smallest, least number of colours possible where the picture still looks good and recognisable. So we've gone down to 68 colours now, and excuse me, you probably don't see a huge difference in the pattern. Let me just do that again. So let's go up to quite a few colours. You don't really see the picture change a great deal, and that's because a lot of these threads, when you allow it, it picks the closest colour it can, but often that isn't needed. There's another colour that's good enough, and you can make do with a smaller set of threads. Now the other input is your size, so you can make the pattern smaller, and obviously when you do, it will look more pixelated because there's less detail in it. You can also make it bigger. It's obviously going to be significant more work if you make a bigger pattern and use more colours. And just to show you, you can zoom in at any point and see the detail in the pattern, so you can go right all the way into seeing the stitches. So we like the fact that you've got this immediate feedback of what's happening to the pattern as you're generating it, and you can see how difficult or how easy it is to stitch. So some of the other options, as well as the DMC colours, we have Riolis and we have Anchor colours. They're just different sets of thread colours, so the software has to match against a different palette. I think the one that my wife's been stitching, this one I think is 60 colours, so you don't need a ton of colours. Usually within 100 is plenty for most patterns. I forget the exact size we did it at. So that's the basics of converting an image into a pattern. It's really you just import the image and then you choose the size and the colours you want. But there's very often, I mean, this is a great photo. This is a professional photographer. What normally impacts the quality is that source image, and very often we see this a lot where people ask us to chart a photo of a pet or something, and we know, because we do it ourselves, is you have your pet and they're doing something hilarious or they're just being the typical them, and you take some snapshots of them, but you're maybe looking down, or it's maybe the lighting, you know, it's in an evening and you've got tungsten lighting in the house, or it's not lit great, so you get a kind of not a great picture. There may be things in the background, and this is where you can struggle to get a good pattern. So it really comes down to the basic rules of photography apply. So you want a really as sharp a picture as you can get. You want good contrast. You want good colour, and you're never going to get those things, or you're rarely going to get those things. So take a lot of pictures and pick the best ones out until you get a good one. So what I'm going to do now is just clear this, because one of the other things we've done with our app is we wanted to try and give you some tools so that you didn't have to use external software to kind of correct photos. Oh, and sorry, before I get to that, the one final bit is the final pattern that gets output. So the final results is really the PDF. So this is an example of ours. We have your thread chart. We give an estimate of the number of skeins of thread for the different stitch counts, and we give you this index page so you can this is straight. I've seen a lot of people where they post their patterns and they've hand drawn, and my wife used to do this. They hand draw the index page onto the cover sheet. So we've generated that for you so you can go straight to a pattern. And this is our pattern, and we have a few things in here. So for instance, we have these indicators. So if you're on one page, you've got arrows that tell you what the adjacent pages are. You've got an overlap of the page before and the page above as well, if you're not on the top row. So that's the page above. And we also we don't limit it to one print size. So that was, you see there, that's quite a oops, must have clicked on something. Siri popped up. So this is quite a large print, so there's only like 4 major grid blocks across the page. You can have the exact same pattern but at a slightly larger print size, so you get more stitches on each page, and you can go all the way to quite small. So it depends what you like to work off, really, what makes sense for you. Let me just pull back. Okay. So let's look at some of the patterns. So people have submitted some photos, and I thought I'd run through a few. So not all of them are submitted ones, but I'll show some of the different software features that you might want to do. So let's be a bit more generous with the size. We do actually go up to 1600, which is enormous for a pattern. You'd never want a kind of normal proportioned image at that size. That's really for if you've got a very thin landscape picture. But this is a great picture. This is off Pixabay. I'll just show you some of the options you've got. So sharpness can make the difference, can just make the image look a bit crisper. So hopefully you can see that. If I turn it off, you'll see the original image, and then I'll put it on a much higher setting. You'll see the image goes sharper, and you can use this in a few situations. So it can make your pattern look a bit more dynamic and crisp. Let me show you another picture. So this is, oops, I have to go off full screen to switch the image. So this is a picture off Pixabay, and this is the kind of thing to consider when you're using a photo. Is if you just obviously this would be great if this was a picture of your pet. If this was a picture that you wanted to stitch, though, if you just drop that whole image in, you're going to have a lot of this extra area that you probably don't want to stitch, just boring and white. So don't be afraid to crop in and just select the part of the image that you're more interested in. And very often that's what makes the difference between a photo. You don't want your pet lost on a lawn full of grass and just your pet tiny in the middle of it. Get close, crop in. But you'll see what a difference here. So if this was whether this is a dog or a cat or whatever, the sharpening option, so if I turn the sharpening up again, you'll see it brings out the fur, and basically what it does is it emphasises any edges, and the fur is just lots of edges. So that's an option to try. The key thing is there's no rush to any of this. If you're going to spend months, even years stitching a piece, if it's a big piece, you want to get the pattern right. So spend time working on it, and don't rush. And I'll show you some of the other things to look for. The other thing that I think has the biggest impact is dithering, and I'll show you this by turning it off first. Oops. Let's go back to the DMC set. So dithering is enabled automatically because it's kind of a good default, and you'll see what that is by these bands of colour. If I turn on advanced options, I've now got this dithering type, and I can set none. And with that, you'll see you've just got the plain bands of colour, and this is where it's matched it to the nearest thread colour. But there isn't really, it makes the picture look simplistic. Now sometimes this is what you want. It will give you a much simpler to stitch pattern because you've got these solid blocks. What dithering does is it really makes it more refined and mixes together, so it kind of speckles at the borders of the two colours. It kind of puts some on one and some from the other on the other side, so you get these smoother transitions. Now you can adjust how much dithering is applied or what the threshold is, and what we sometimes see in a lot of patterns, not just ours that we've created, is there'll be a part of the pattern that's got some detail, which is the focal point, and then maybe other parts of the pattern, or sometimes even on the main, it'll be part of a face or something, you'll get these bands of colour, and that's when you get those and you see these sort of solid transitions, that may be a sign that you need a little bit more dithering, just to turn up the setting. Now there's tons of dithering options. These are all named after the people who invented them. Most of them work kind of the same way. Floyd Steinberg is one of the oldest original ones, and that's actually the one that Max Stitch uses. It tends not to be as good because you get these repeating patterns, so you can end up with like lines or stripes in the pattern. Atkinson is a great option. That gives you a kind of, it's known as a kind of pretty dithering, and it retains some of the banding, so it doesn't mix things too much, so it's still kind of easier to stitch. The other one to try is this Remersma one, which works a different way. This one works really good if you're doing a picture of a face and you've got skin. This often makes a really big difference. What else? So some of these other options, when I put advanced on, you get these very scary sounding colour reduction methods and colour matching. For the most part you can ignore these, and that's why they're hidden from when you don't have the advanced option on. I'll cover those in a later stream maybe, because I don't want to get too in the woods with things. But let's start now looking at some of the pictures people have submitted, and how we'd go about making them into patterns. So, and if I say anything, I don't mean to be rude about anyone's pictures or dismissive, but I'll try and point out how to make them better, because you want your cross stitch to be as good as possible. So this one is D Dove's picture, which is a great picture of a husky. Obviously it could be sharper, so you need to look at how the pattern comes out. But sometimes if you've got a picture that isn't quite so sharp, it doesn't matter so much, because when you make the pattern smaller, say you're doing you only want a smaller version to stitch, that kind of has the effect of making it look a little bit sharper. The other thing with a picture like this is, and this is, again, is typical of most people's photos, is it's maybe a little bit flat and lacking some contrast. This happens because of the way cameras see the world, and they try and average everything out to a particular shade of grey. And what we can do, we provide some control over that, so you can actually boost the contrast in the image, and as you make it more, now contrast is basically stretching the colours in the image, so the white parts or the lighter parts become lighter, the dark parts become darker, so it makes your image a lot more vivid, and that doesn't look too bad. You can probably stand a little bit more. Yeah, so the only other thing you'd probably want to do with this picture is to use some editing software just to change the I guess dogs don't have red eye, they have white eye. Maybe the breed of the looks like the camera flash, and that wouldn't be too bad as a picture. Again, always check for the dithering. Don't just, so if you have dithering too low, that's where you get these sort of large blotches or bands of colour. So here again on his chest, and you can increase the dithering, get it to the point where those disappear. On that, let's choose a different option. Yeah, so you can see where the dithering kicks in. You know, if you turn it very low, you get more like, I remember painting by numbers, where you get the things that you colour in. So that's going to be a much easier, quicker pattern to stitch than if you turn dithering up, but then that's going to look more realistic because you've got more subtle variations of colour beyond what the number of colours say. And again, you've got the instant feedback, so try changing the colours, reduce the number of colours, try and get it as low as possible. What I like to do is look at the least used colours. So if you sort by the colour count, look down here. If you've got a lot of colours that are like one, a handful of pixels, that's sometimes a sign that you've got too many colours, and you don't need that many, so you can reduce them. So that's one. Let's reset the settings. Let's go back to the defaults. Oops. Normally I think the default is 85. And let's try some of the other pictures. So we have this is Debbie Southwards. This made me laugh because I think we have the same couch, and we also have a blanket on the couch that is the dog's, and it's a special place, and she fights with the cat for it. So this is really a picture where, like before, you benefit from cropping it. So one thing to bear in mind, if you do a picture, even if you decide, well, I'll just convert the picture as is and I'll just stitch this part of it, what's going to happen is the software is looking at the entire image, so it's going to be looking at some of these colours in the picture on the wall, and the couch and all this kind of thing. So again, this is an example where if you crop in first before you import the picture, you'll get much better results. And again, it's also quicker to work with because you're working with a smaller picture then. And again, changing the contrast can work wonders with a lot of images. And you can, as before, you can adjust the amount of dithering and stuff. You can also, like, sharpening works can be a subtle thing as well, so it can often just bring out features in faces and stuff, especially when you're reducing the size. The other thing to bear in mind, and the other thing I see a lot, let me just pull up a web page that I saved. So sometimes people send images to be charted, and they've really been corrupted, because every time, if you have a picture that's in JPEG format, which most cameras are going to save your picture as a JPEG, every time you load and then save that image, it degrades it. It's what's called a lossy format, so it's throwing away some information out of the image to do the compression, and over time it turns into this. You can, if you overdo it and it compresses too much, you get these weird effects of kind of a blocky square picture. Now what happens is if you import that into a cross-stitch tool, any cross-stitch tool, when it's looking for the nearest colour for each thread, what ends up happening is those variations, those distortions kind of get amplified, so you suddenly get this very blocky weird colour thing. So don't work from a picture that's been saved a lot of times. Try and work from the original picture off your camera. Don't, like, the other thing I see a lot is people will take a picture of a picture on their phone, so they'll maybe load up their photos off Google Drive or something on their phone, do a screenshot of that, and then try and work from, and and send that or share that via Facebook. That's you getting multiple levels of image compression being applied, and that can affect the final results. Let's see some others. So we have a rat. I thought it was a mouse at first when I saw the photo. Apparently it's a rat. And again, this would be great if you zoom in to the picture. And again, contrast works great. Add some contrast, because otherwise the picture's a little bit too flat. And the other thing you can do, so increasing the contrast on this one, it's making the darker areas darker, and a lot of that is the actual subject that you want. So what you can do with this advanced option, well, without the advanced option, you could just try and make the image brighter. So that's one way of doing it. The other option is you have this grey point, and that's really the point where the contrast is trying to be centered on. So normally it's right in the middle. So from the middle of the luminosity, the top gets brighter, the bottom gets darker. You can shift that, so you can say, well, if I make it lower, then it gets lighter and darker around either a darker point or a lighter point. So sometimes that can retain some of the detail in the darker areas of the image, because what you're looking for is, you don't want, when you adjust the contrast, you don't want to either blow out areas where it just becomes white and you lose all the detail. So for instance, if I did this the other way, all the detail in the fur here, oops, no, it's not going to show it, you'd lose that, and vice versa. When I showed it, then you saw the dark pieces, you lose this detail in the darker areas of the pictures. The other thing you can do is increase the saturation. So this is really kind of boosting the colours, so it's adding colour to the image. So the green pieces become a little bit greener, the pink pieces of his ears and stuff become a little bit pinker or redder, and that can also help. So very often it's a case of, you load the image, play around with the settings, and all these, you're not all it costs is time, really. And at any point you can, if you get completely lost or it's all gone wrong, you can reset and just start again and play, use a different approach. Like sometimes you start by changing contrast, sometimes you start by changing brightness. Let's see what other pictures we've got. Now there was, oh yeah, this one's a great picture. So this is Michelle Keller's. This guy looks great. Now this I think showed when I set the size lower. So this is a great example of a really nice sharp picture. Obviously if you lower the size, you're going to lose some of that sharpness, but then you can kind of artificially add it back by boosting the sharpness settings, so you get the nice, the glints, the detail around the eye, the bling, which looks great. And again, this one shows up if we boost the contrast. Looks really good, and you can see the effect here I was talking about, where you get this blown out, so this is too much contrast and it's become solid, solid white area, and that's where you'd, especially if you put this the other way as well, it'd go even more. So you want to watch out for things like that, and it's really a case of look objectively at the picture. Don't just see the picture of your pet. You're always going to think that's great. Look for the detail of, like, are there areas that have gone completely white or completely black? Have I lost detail in any area? And really focus on what's the important piece. So in this, you're probably more focused on the face, that you don't want to lose any of that detail. So you may sacrifice some of the detail in other parts of the image, and you don't care about those going black, because in this case it'd be in the background, which is fine. And again, you can boost the colours a little bit, play with the dithering, so that you don't have quite so much solid blocks. And again, you get the nice picture, and you can zoom in. You can check the pattern. This is especially useful when you're changing the dithering, because you can adjust how difficult you want the pattern to be. So let's reset again, and then another picture we got. Oops, just go cheat and refresh. I think I just found a bug. This was from Lou Andrea Davignon. This is a dog that passed away, but it's a fantastic picture, and this I like. And one thing I should cover, like, it's really worth doing just a little bit of learning about photography. So there's things when you take a picture, and again we get these requests a lot of, there'll be something in the background or it's cluttered and people want it removed, and you can, to a certain extent, you can remove the background, but it'll always look kind of artificial and a little bit strange. It's not as good as if you can take a picture so that the background is blurred or clear and uncluttered. And this picture, let's just up the resolution so you can see, this is really nice because it's used depth of field. So when you take a picture, if you have a wide aperture on it, if you're using a phone, it'll be called something like portrait mode. It's basically what gives you this blurred background, so it's less distracting, and you've got the focus on the main subject. So again, you could if you wanted, I mean, it's nice composition, but you could crop tighter into the picture so that you're not going to be stitching as much sand and sea. And again, this shows, if you start with a really good picture, you don't have to do much, but you could still boost the sharpness a little bit. Again, even on an already good picture, contrast can help. You'll see this is being blown out a little bit white. This is actually an example where using these different colour matching systems can sometimes make a difference. Sometimes it's not as good. Sometimes it will actually really make an improvement. And again, it's just a case of trying them. What you find as you get more experience, you'll see the picture and you kind of instinctively know what settings may work well with them, so all that experience does is save you time. You can go to the settings you need kind of earlier. There's actually not much I'd really change about this. It comes out great as is. I'd probably just work at the contrast around this bit so that it doesn't lose the detail. I should check the original image as well. Sometimes if the detail isn't there in the original image, you kind of chasing the detail that isn't there. But if you get a nice image, you get a nice pattern from it. The other thing that works well, and of course always try at different sizes, so you may not need to stitch as big a piece to get the detail that you want, and always try it with different number of colours. So reduce the colours and see if it makes a noticeable difference to the image. You'll see if you go way too low that you start getting this very distorted kind of art print kind of look to things, which sometimes can be a nice effect. And the other thing to think about with pictures of people, loved ones, pets and stuff, you can use things like sepia tone. Gives it kind of a nostalgic feel to it, and there's also grayscale, and these are good options because they dramatically reduce the number of colours that you need in a pattern. So they're always there as options. You can maybe want that as the picture. It's up to you. You've got all the options. You can set all the settings to how you want. What else was I going to cover? I guess the only other thing to cover is where you actually get your pictures from. So most of the things we've been looking at here are pictures that people have sent in, so they're your own pictures. What often comes up though is you'll get questions of, can I chart this picture? I found this picture on Pinterest or Facebook. In fact, before I do that, I'll just show a couple more, because we didn't do many of faces. So this is my bestest buddy. So just to show you, we think our software does a good job with faces and skin tones. And what I was saying before about the reverse mirrors, the dithering option tends to not need as much. You see it does a really good, nice job of converting a face and skin tones, and you can still adjust the contrast and stuff. And you can once you've got settings for a particular photo, and these are more like studio taken photos, so the backgrounds are already really good to look at, which is an option to do. Like, you can set it up at home, set up a white sheet in the background, take pictures of your kids against that. Pets as well, and children as well, they just take a long time. Just take as many pictures. Everything's electronic now. It's not like when you had to pay to have photos developed. Just keep taking as many photos and then pick out the few that you like, and that's really what professional photographers do. So you can get some good portraits, and again you could go right down. I find that a really good picture can often stand going down to a smaller size better than a poorer picture. Just don't forget that you're always going to lose some detail, but you can sort of sharpen it up to some extent. So the other thing I was going to show you is, oops, wrong window. Images. So say you've got a photo, a picture. So you found some piece of art or a photograph, and you decide, I want to stitch that. So let's look at the picture we had before of the snow leopard. So you found this picture on Pinterest or Facebook, and you think, that would make a great cross-stitch photo. Well, you can't just use it because it's not your picture. But I'll show you a couple of ways that you can maybe track down whose picture it is. The first one is Google Images. If you actually drag and drop an image onto the page, or there's a button as well to upload an image, it'll do a reverse image search, and it will find you pages that have that picture on. So sometimes, so this is for merchandise that's got that picture. What you're looking for is maybe a photographer's page, or so Pexels, or a site like this. So this is a photo site where photographers can share their work, and this one happens to license them as Creative Commons, which is you're allowed to use them. So if you click on here, so it's Creative Commons 0 license. There's a few different ones. Is you're allowed to use it even for commercial use. You look for something like that, and that basically says that yes, you're allowed to use that picture. The other one that you can use is TinEye, and again you drag and drop, or just put the URL in. You can actually put it directly off Facebook post, and you'll get all the websites that picture's on. So in this one, it's on Pixabay, which again is a free open source license where the photographer, the owner, makes their image available. So you always want to try and stay legal and not just use someone else's work without permission. The other thing, if you find a piece that you really want to stitch, maybe it's on an artist's website or their Deviant Art gallery, something like that, is send them a message and ask. Very often, if it's for personal use, you're not going to be reselling it. They may be flattered and give you permission to stitch it, even if it's a famous artist. It's always better to try and do the right thing. So I think that's enough of the basics covered. I can't think of anything else I wanted to say for this first one. I hope it's been useful. I mean, if there's one takeaway, I'd say, don't be intimidated. There's no mystery. There's no special skills needed to convert an image into a pattern. Start with choosing the best photo you can. Either take a picture specially, or go through your photos and look objectively at them. Don't just focus on the pet or the person or whatever. Don't be afraid to crop in and get a tighter composition, because very often you want the picture to be of the pet, not of the surroundings they were in. And then just try the various settings. See what the different options do. I'm just checking my wife's chat. Oh right, so the question of whether it's DMC only. No, so you can, if we go back to choosing a picture, let's pick one. Oops. Oh, here's one we didn't do. This is someone else's pet that sadly passed away, and this is we see a lot that people want to. It's a great way to remember a pet. They give us so much when they're with us. So I'll just adjust this. Yeah. The other thing to remember, I didn't point out, whatever size you set, it will never go larger than the image actually is. It won't stretch the image larger. So again, you change some contrast, so I'll do this quickly. So in terms of threads, DMC are the most common one, so it defaults to using the normal DMC thread range, which is the 482, and that includes the new 01 to 35 colours. So if it needs to, it will pick some of those colours. If you use CXC, or if you're doing diamond painting as well, and there's only they don't have those new colours yet, you just can't get the new colours, you can use the 447 range. So that's the original, starting at 150 going up to 3800s, and then these others, the Zanka and Riolis. The reason for having these different ones, and this is actually an important consideration, although you can get converters to say, well, I've got a pattern that's in DMC and I want to stitch it with Anchor, or vice versa, you will never get results as good because the colours aren't identical. So if you actually tell the program it can use these different colours, it will be picking different threads than if you just do a one-to-one conversion. So that's why you'd want to stitch it with your exact thread set. You'll just never get as good results. I don't see any more questions, so that either means it was too confusing or I covered everything. It's probably too confusing. So there's a few pictures we didn't get to. I didn't want to go on too long. Like I say, try the app out. If you get stuck and you're and you can't get your picture looking good, feel free to message us, and we're happy to help you figure out what the best settings to use. As I say, with experience, you just start getting to the right settings quicker. You know what some of the settings, the effect they have on the output. Thanks for watching. We're actually going to give everyone a coupon. We'll post it on the chat. Let me post it now. So if you do use the program, our program is free to use, so you can try it out as much as you want, and it doesn't cost you anything, nothing to install. If you do decide that you get to the point where you like the pattern and you want to stitch it, you can buy it if you want. I've just posted the coupon. Actually, I'll just show you how that works. So say I decide that this is, just up the brightness a little bit, this is a pattern I want to buy. I click here, that adds it to my cart, and I see it there. Now if I post this coupon code, I get the 50% off. So yeah, but definitely get in touch if you have any problems. We do also have a pattern store, so we generate our own patterns off images that we like, lots of dogs and birds and stuff. But sometimes you want just a ready-made. You don't want to go through. But it's worth looking through, because you may get some ideas of how things can come out. And if you like one of the effects in these pictures, some great ones as well. We've got an artist that did some sketches. We can always help you get your pictures to look like these. We try to do really accurate mock-ups, so anything you look at you can zoom in, and as I showed at the beginning, you had the eagle picture. What you see on the screen really does come out in actual stitches exactly like the pattern was generated. So thank you so much for watching. I hope it's been of some interest and value. Let me know what you think. Any feedback, good or bad. I'd like to improve how I'm doing. Yeah, those pictures are an artist called Mia. She does. If you want, the other option as well is, instead of doing a cross stitch, if you have a pet, that she actually does pet portraits. So you can get a portrait made of your pet. You could stitch the portrait if you wanted to, but just the artwork would be a great option as well. So definitely check that out. I'll post a link to her page. So that's it. Thank you very much for watching. Give us any feedback you can. Thank you.